Greg Popovich used to say, pound the block, right? And it was a stone cutter that's pounding the block. When the block finally breaks, it's not the last hit that did the block. It's all the hits leading up to it, right? You stack those days, you get 1% better, 1% better. All of a sudden, that compound interest of skill acquisition, then you could be a player.
All right, welcome back to the 1% Bttr Podcast. Today we have Dennis Stanton on. Dennis, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, little background on Dennis here. Played basketball at Lansdale College High School. Didn't receive many D1 offers going into college, and it led to this relentless pursuit of growth and hard work for yourself. But your sinus college, that we're both very familiar with, gave you a shot, and it led to a career overseas. From there, moved into coaching, and then became the athletic director at Souderton High School and founder of Every Level Basketball. That's my introduction of yourself, but Dennis, in your own words, how do you describe yourself and your work in sports with athletes and student athletes and just the personal development side of things?
Yeah, no doubt. No, I appreciate that intro. And, sports has been like such a common theme that is kind of interwoven into my personal journey, professional journey, family journey, everything. So I've been just blessed. I think there's so many things that you can learn from sports that translate to other parts of our life and other parts of our profession. But like you said, I went to LaSalle High School. I went to Ursinus College, and I had great experiences. And, the sports piece, one thing that's inevitable is failure. And like I look back on, when I was a junior in high school, I tell this story often. When I was a junior in high school, I started every single game, and my best friend was suspended for the first half of the season. And we were like 10-2. I was playing well, and come back from Christmas break. He comes back and he comes off the bench, has like 15 points. Next game comes off the bench, has 20. Third game starts, and then I never play the rest of the season. That's junior year of high school. And, most people, junior high school, that's where you're getting recruited. That's everything. And so that crushing experience for me really kind of shaped who I was, because my parents never really, when I would come home, they would never say, you should be starting, you should be playing, let's talk to the coach, you should talk to the coach. They never said anything, really. They just said, keep working. And I do believe that kind of mindset instilled in me allowed me to just focus on the process of getting better. And I think that allowed me to then play at Ursinus College, which had tons of failure there. And then, after Ursinus College, I played overseas. I played in Poland, Denmark, Italy, and Spain, and then got right into teaching. I was teaching and coaching at Perkins Valley. I was a long-term sub. I did my student teaching there. I was an assistant coach there, had a ton of fun, and then went to Souderton, taught and coached there for 2 years. And then left that, went to Ursinus as a assistant coach, and I taught in their sports science department, and then came back as athletic director at Souderton, and I'm in year 10 there as athletic director. With all that being said, my real passion other than playing has been building a business, Every Level Basketball. We're in year 22. So we started in 2004. This will be our 22nd summer. And that's just been a passion project, and started really small. We've been blessed with just great kids, working with great kids, working with great coaches, and having the opportunity to impact kids. And I've always enjoyed seeing the skill development piece, the personal development piece of our campers. But I really take a lot of pride and passion, and really just selfishly satisfaction in seeing our coaches grow as young men and young women through the context of their own mentorship and coaching of kids.
Incredible. Yeah, I have followed Every Level Basketball closely. A lot of friends, their children have gone through it. It's pretty remarkable just to see the growth through the years. You talk about this mental side of sports as well, and the challenges that student athletes go through, and how they can use visualization and rehearsing both positive and negative outcomes. It can go both ways. How do you help athletes respond to negative outcomes during a game, practice, but also life?
Yeah, it's awesome, and I love this part of personal development and athlete development. It's just it's one that I did not work on until probably mid college, and then I really locked into it in college, and then as a professional. But just simple stuff like the day before the game, mentally, as you said, mentally rehearsing exactly what's going to happen and using those five senses, like the smell of the gym, the sight of the gym, the other team's jersey, who you're guarding, who's going to be guarding you. What the gym feels like and what the sounds feel like. And just literally, I'll mentally rehearse what it feels like to warm up. I'm making a shot in warm-ups. I'm high-fiving my teammates in warm-ups. I'll mentally rehearse that first huddle with our coach quickly, like what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and then tipping the ball. And then what I'll walk through with the student athlete, and we'll do this in lacrosse, football, whatever it is, whatever actions they are going to partake in the game, those specific plays and specific actions of what that looks like, and putting them in positive outcome-based visions, and they're creating this vision of what it should look like. And, but as you alluded to, like, I also walk them through what happens when you make a mistake, because, the best shooters in the world miss it 60% of the time. So if you're going to miss it 60% of the time, how are you going to mentally stay focused? And, so seeing them make that mistake, visualizing that mistake, seeing them running back on defense and then staying present on the defensive end after that mistake, actually watching them self-talk, hey, good shot, good stroke, whatever it might be, and visualizing those actions, I think is super important. And one thing I tell our student athletes is that, look, there's no guarantee. Like, there's no guarantee that if you do this, you're going to play really well. If you do this, you're going to be a sharp, mentally tough student athlete. But there is a guarantee if you don't work on it, you're not going to get better at it.
Sure.
It's the same that holds true with work. Like, if you work really hard at something, you could practice every single day and still go 2 for 12. Like, when it comes to work and when it comes to the process, you can't keep score. Meaning, like, if you do this, this will happen. If you stack days, eventually you're going to see success and you're going to feel success. And that's what I believe in the mental side of things as well. And kind of the latter part of your question about life, it's I've really, in the last like 5 years, and I don't think it has anything to do with COVID. I think it has to do with, like, kids. I got kids that are my 2 daughters, they're 11 and 9, and I got a 6-year-old. Like, as you're growing as an adult and you take on more responsibility, with that responsibility comes just racing thoughts, and like constant thoughts are coming in your mind about how you can be better at your job, how you can be better at business, how you can be better at relationships, and then obviously raising kids as well, their schedules and things like that. So all these thoughts are coming in, and a lot of them are negative. And so my personal challenge, and I do this with my wife as well, like we're trying to figure out how to deal with those thoughts, and really embrace those thoughts, understand that it's like part of life, but just try to get closer to peace, which is a really hard thing to do. And so I tell our student athletes, like, you're going to deal with this your entire life, negative thoughts, positive thoughts. How can you understand that those thoughts most of the time are about the future and it's never even going to happen? And we create these narratives, and our mind doesn't even know that those thoughts are coming in our mind. We create this narrative. It's the same thing. Like, you go 2 for 12, and then you have this thought that you're not a good shooter, but you shoot 40%, right? You, in business, I go through this almost every single January, February, March. Oh my gosh, our numbers aren't where they are. We're not going to have a good summer. If I've done this for 21 years, that I've created this negative narrative, and it never happens. God bless, I'm blessed that it hasn't. But I'm really working on that in my own life because those thoughts are always happening. So I tell the student athletes, look, you want to try to get better and play better at baseball, softball, tennis, golf, lacrosse, but this is going to be a great asset for your life, because I'm trying to work through it right now. I'm 42 years old. So
yeah, so many great points, and especially looking ahead at negative thoughts or things that aren't even realistic yet. And I saw a stat that was 85% of the things that we think about never actually, if they are negative, never even actually come into fruition. And there's a great quote that I love of, the past is history, the future is a mystery, and today is a present for the present. And I find that so valuable, especially coming from a sports background myself, playing multiple sports, and the correlation of the mental side of things and the preparation and the practice, and just trusting the process that you're going through, that it is going to lead to good results, even if you have a bad day. Like, that's a given. And I coach that for my reps as well. You could have a bad day. It's inevitable. but you just need to stick through the process and continue that growth of kind of what this podcast is all about. The 1% better compounds over time, and you just continue to improve. Another great thought that I loved on the mental side of sports that you've spoken about is the mistake ritual that you've gone through. Can you share your perspective on this and how you used it as a player, and how students and even the parents can adopt this similar approach to move past setbacks that they go through?
Yeah, well, I really like that quote about the present and the future. It is really hard to play present. In life, it's hard to be present. When you're trying to be present in a meeting, you're trying to be present at home with your kids. This thing kills us. The cell phone kills us to be present. So we're constantly, there's professionals that are working against you in all social media to distract you. And so I love that part about, playing present. And so when it comes to making mistakes, how can you still play in the moment? Really, really hard thing to do, something that you have to practice. And, I tell leadership, I think, is just, you're constantly under construction. Skill development, you're constantly under construction. Personal development, you're constantly under construction. So this stuff, you're always going to have to work at. It's not a light switch that you're just going to be like, I'm able to play present. I'm able to shake off this mistake. So the mistake ritual is real simple. Like, you could do whatever you want. We had a softball pitcher, when she would pitch a bad pitch or walk a player, she would just go like this, and she would flush out the mistake. So mentally she's flushing out the mistake, but also it's symbolically representing that she's moving on to that next pitch. The other cool part about it, the other 8 girls on that team knew that, hey, she's ready for the next pitch.
Right.
For me, I used to wipe the bottom of my sneakers. That's after a turnover, after a couple missed shots. And again, that's wiping the mistake away. And I shared that with my teammates. I said, look, you might think that I'm missing some shots or I'm off my game. When you see me wipe my sneakers, I'm on to the next one. And so that's something that I always like to use. And, we try to provide, I try to provide ownership to the student athlete. Like, you make your own, whatever it might be. This one student would wipe his chest, and I'm wiping off that mistake. Again, can't keep score with it. It's not going to work every single time, but I do believe that you're building in you're building parts of your toolbox to equip yourself for when you make a mistake. And the other piece of it is, if you have a mistake ritual, you're acknowledging the fact that you're going to make mistakes. Having that acknowledgement of the mistake and embracing the mistake, and also valuing the mistake. So one thing that we talk about, in particularly when it's a skill acquisition element, or like it's a skill. So the skill of shooting. So I tell student athletes, there's times where you're going to shoot a very good shot, and you've done this before, Chuck, and the ball goes in and out, or the ball goes long, or the ball goes short. Rotation's beautiful, arc is beautiful. You have to value that miss, not only verbally saying good stroke, good shot, but also understanding, like, you put a good stroke on that ball, and the next shot you take is, you should feel as if you're shooting the ball well. And that might happen 2 or 3 times over the course of the game where you shoot a good shot and it just doesn't go in. So you have to value that make to in order to play present and shake that mistake off.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's happened one too many times that I can count. So that one hit home. Yeah. This embracing failure is so important, a part of student athletes, but also having that growth mindset to continue to improve over time. And failure's inevitable, and it is a pivotal part of growth. And I'm very curious on the side of things with the student athletes embracing failure, but also staying motivated to improve and not getting down on themselves. I remember when I was a student athlete, you're young, you're in such a developmental phase of your life, and you don't have all this history behind you that you can look back to and use as kind of that pillar to embrace. So how do you embrace failure as a young student athlete, but also continue to stay motivated through that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, honestly, is mentorship and coaching. And then, we tell our coaches, you got to fill the gap. And the gap is this gap in communication that a coach has with a player, or that a player has with another player. The conversation that we put off as a coach, we see that kid struggling, that kid, we're limiting their playing time. They're decreasing their playing time. And if we don't have that conversation, because we don't want to have that conversation right now, we want to have that conversation tomorrow. You put that conversation off for a day, that student fills that gap in with negativity. They always do. They fill it in with, the coach doesn't like me. The coach thinks I stink. So you know, I like your question. I think a lot of it is parenting and coaching and filling the gap in with positivity. And I also like what you're saying about how there's not kind of like a big past, there's not a lot of data from the kid. He's only been playing for 5 years, or he's only been playing high school for 2 years, but they still can reach back into their previous performances and garner confidence from previous success.
Sure.
Success comes from work, and confidence comes from success. Success comes from work. So when you fall back on the work and you fall back on previous success, sometimes we can garner present confidence to battle through those tough times, to persevere through those tough times. But all that to say, like, you really can't do it alone. When you're 16, 17 years old, you got to have great teammates. You got to have great leaders. You got to have great coaches. I have conversations with student athletes all the time about these things. And oftentimes they don't want to hear it, but they don't want to hear that you don't have any options. Your option is you can be a victim of your circumstance and feel bad about yourself and blame it on the coach or blame it on other student athletes, or you can be an architect of the response. We can control that response. That space in between kind of the stimulus and the response is where a lot gets lost. And they only have two options. And I try to limit those options. You can be a victim or you can be a killer and keep working and fighting and scrapping. And there's no guarantee. Like if right now we had a conversation 2 days ago, like it's December 10th and you could do what I'm asking you to do. And on January 20th, at the latter part of your winter season, you still might be in the same spot. But my challenge to that student is like, you've grown as a man, you've grown as a young woman, because you've actually went all in at something, not worrying about the result. And really the hard part is not worrying what people think. People don't want to go all in this stage in their life. Well, when you're talking about it at the high school level and even at the college level, they don't want to go all in and give everything they possibly can, because if they fail, they're worried what people think. Oh, that kid's a tryhard. That kid's working so hard. He's still the 9th best player. And my challenge to players, and it's a really hard challenge, and only certain kids are up for this challenge. I'm going to go all in regardless of the outcome, regardless of my playing time. And I don't care what people think. I'm going to be different in February. And that difference that you are in February is you built character. You forged character into who you are.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think a world that we're in now is instant gratification. And with that instant gratification comes the work that goes into something that's going to be long term. And that's difficult for even people our age to really hone in and say, like, hey, this might not happen overnight. It might not happen in a month or even a year, but I'm in it for the long term because I want to be a part of this process and this journey that I'm going to be on, because everybody is so focused on that end result that they're trying to get to. They don't even want to enjoy that journey, where the failures and the success along that journey are so important. Some of my friends to this day are from my early days of basketball, when I would be bummed out of how I played in a game or something like that. And I wasn't even thinking, or if I had my future self say, hey, that guy right there is going to be one of your groomsmen. That guy right there is going to be with you through some of the toughest times in your life. Something so much bigger than just the game that we play or the preparation that we're going through. There's so many deep angles and perspectives to look at it. So really love what you're speaking about there. And I think the other side too is the parenting side, and as a sports parent. So I would love to ask you, as your children are coming up now and dealing with a lot of young adults, how do you balance, as a sports parent, how do you balance the instinct to step in with just allowing your child to experience failure and develop a growth mindset?
Oh, it's a great question, man. And it's really hard. And I acknowledge that it's really hard, because I talk to parents all the time. And, as a parent, like there's an instinct that we want to protect. And my father-in-law once said to me, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. Okay. So when your kid is unhappy, you're going to be unhappy. You want to fix it. You want to help them, right? If they're sick, you want them to feel better. You're hurt. You know what I mean? If something's wrong, you want to fix it. And it's somewhat, it goes against the grain, and it's counterintuitive from the parental standpoint to, when the kid's failing, you want to talk to the coach and you want to blame others and you want to think he should be playing. The second you go down the path of blaming others and building in an excuse, you are robbing your kid of the experience. You're robbing the kid of growth. And I started this podcast here today with telling you about my junior year, because I do think that experience was so fundamental in my growth. Because if my parents said that you should be playing, or that they said, the coach has got it out for you, or they're playing this kid because his mom's on the booster club, I would have never worked like I did. Right. So it is really hard. And I've had conversations with my wife. Like, our 3 kids play sports. They play soccer, they play basketball, they play lacrosse. And they're into it, but they're not like passionate about it. And like, I can't teach them passion. But there's times, there's times where my wife, she'll say to me like, oh man, I really think, I think she should be playing more. I said, don't say a word. Don't say a word in the car. Don't say a word to her. She needs to work. My daughter, basketball is my life. It's been my life. My 11-year-old is on a travel basketball team for Whitpain, WRA. My brother is the coach. My brother was the coach, 3rd grade. And, he cut her from the team and put her on the B team. And he called me. He said, dude, I don't know what to do. I said, Chris, she doesn't deserve to make the team. Like, thank you. This is a blessing. This is a favor, right? And this is where she belongs. She belongs on the B team. And now let's see how much she wants it, And, my wife's like, you got problems. But I'm like, this is what it takes. And this has nothing to do with her being a great basketball player. This is like, if you really want something, you got to go after it. And also, like, there's no free lunch in life. And so I don't want anyone to give my kids anything because I played basketball or anything like that, or sports or anything like that. But I could tell you that you're going to see it real soon, man. It is, and I remember when my kids were really young, and people at Souderton, when I first started working there, they were like, there's so many politics in Shiba, which is like PVYB.
Yeah.
And, I played sports growing up, and I was like, how could there be politics in youth sports? But holy cow, man, it is unbelievable. Like, coaches that coach are in it for certain reasons and things like that. And, I try to support my kids and help out with their teams where I can, and work, train my kids' teams. But when you see it happening, when you see parents, like you said, kind of inserting themselves into the process, it's really sad, because they're just killing their kid, and they're not giving their kid an opportunity to grow, learn. And then what happens, Chuck, is like, when we get them at the high school level, they've spent 3rd grade is when travel sports start most of the time, 3rd grade to 8th grade. They've spent that time being on a team that they shouldn't be on, right, getting playing time that they shouldn't have gotten. And so when 9th grade happens, whose fault is it? It's my fault, and it's our coach's fault, right? My kid's been averaging 12 on the PVYB travel team. Your kid should have been on the B team. Your kid shouldn't have made the travel team. So now it's Mike Poiston's fault, it's not fair. And that is the cycle. And like, part of me, when I first started in athletics as an athletic director, I was like, the truth they'll figure out the truth in high school. But the parent and the kid that when they act like that, which is most parents, they never see the truth, right? Because it's always someone else's fault. It's always the coach's fault. So even when the kid's 18 years old, the truth, they never see the truth. But when they get punched in the mouth, it is in the real world. And that's what stinks. That's when the parent's long gone. They're and the kid actually has to really figure out how to be a man, how to be a woman, and how to embrace failure. Because you never had to embrace failure. Because then they stop playing sports, they go to college, they play rec sports, whatever. But their whole sport career was kind of like, it was covered over by the parent and was controlled by the parent. And even when the failure happened, it was never Johnny's fault. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, totally. I still say it to this day, but I did reffing of just youth games, 3rd to 5th graders, probably 5-6 years ago at this point. And it was just amazing at how many parents are screaming at you, like, for the issues that are going on. And yeah, obviously you want to say something back, but you don't. And you just understand that, okay, this is where we're at with things. And I find it so fascinating for where it was at when we were growing up, but where it's at now. And I'm curious, have you seen a shift in just how parents and the child dynamic has evolved through the years since you were even playing to what it is now? Has there been an evolution in the last couple decades?
100%, man. And it was probably different when you were playing as when I was playing, but the pendulum swung so far, and I don't know if it can ever swing back. So I would say it's all about time at this point. So when I was growing up, I played for like a PVYB, and they didn't have travel. It was called Squires, North Penn, North Penn School District. We played Squires, and I played CYO, and we would have one practice a week for Squires and one game a week for Squires. I think we practiced 2 times a week for CYO, one game on the weekend, and that's all we really did for basketball. Probably played in a summer league, right? But now the pendulum swung so far with respect to how much time you have to put in. Like when my daughter was in 3rd grade, she was on travel soccer, a very low level travel soccer team. Like she's, I love her to death. If my kids listen to this, I love you guys, but you know, you're on the C team for travel soccer, and the coaches are super passionate and they're awesome. It's not the coach's fault. They are put into a predicament where they'll start in July 1, they go to November 1. Okay. And they're practicing 2 times a week. They're playing 30 games. You get like 2 weeks off, then you go to indoor season, okay, which isn't a lot of practices, but you're still playing a lot of games. You get 2 weeks off, then you go to spring season, okay? This is just for soccer. Then youth basketball, travel basketball starts in October 1, that goes till February 1, right? That's 2 practices a week, game on the weekend. So like if I showed you our calendar, it's unbelievable. Like it's also anti-family, Chuck. So it's like, so all these kids are doing so many sports and they're practicing so much. We're not even talking about individual training camps, clinics, lessons, all that stuff,
Right.
So it really is that they're putting so much time in. And to be honest with you, I don't know if the skills are better than when you played or when I played. Like, just because there's a diminishing margin of return of like, if you're playing 3 sports and you're playing 3 travel sports and you're playing AAU and you're playing club, like how much better can you possibly get when when a coach walks in the gym and he's got 90 minutes, he's got to do defense, offense, press break, baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds. How many times are you dribbling and shooting, right? So I don't even want to blame the parents because I'm complicit in it. Like, our calendar is disgusting. Like it is anti-family. And my wife is trying to bring it back. Like, Dennis, this is ridiculous. Like something's got to give. And we kind of started doing it with my son. He's 6 years old. And we were like, you know what? He's not playing soccer this year. Like, so he did. What's he doing? He did flag football, loved it. No practices. They go on Sunday, they work, they play. It was awesome experience. And he'll do the rec basketball, he'll do rec baseball. Like we're doing a little bit different with our son because our daughters love being on a team. Like my daughter had the end of year soccer party last night at Dave and Buster's, happiest kid in the world. Loves going to tournaments, loves going, like they never complain about going. But just the amount of time, it's so structured. Dude, my kids don't know what it feels like to go outside and play soccer or go outside and play pickup basketball. They have no idea what that feels like. So that they lack creativity. They can't make decisions quickly and things like that because everything is so structured. And it's not the coach's fault. It's not the parents' fault. It's just this pendulum has swung so far in society. It's like, well, if you just play rec, you're going to practice once a week and play one game. Right. As opposed to all the reps that the kid's going to get. So it's really difficult. I don't have a solution for it, Chuck, but I would say it's a great question that you ask, and it's 100% changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, like, what would potentially be a solution because the pendulum has swung so far. And I started noticing it as I was graduating out of my time, where you would go from a 3-sport athlete in high school to really just focusing on one sport. And because of the demand, and you talk about this diminishing return, at what point do you kind of cut that off and realize like, okay, we're getting as much out of this as we're going to get. And we need to start filling the gaps in other areas of development and a different routine that they can potentially be in, and not just the same exact routine. You said this earlier, and I've seen it in some of your videos of you can't keep score. You just have to keep trying. And that just hits home from a sports level, but also a professional level as well. How do you apply that mindset to your work and your professional life for yourself, but also with your children too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. That's an awesome question, especially with the family piece. I'll start with that piece. As a husband and as a father, it's like, if you keep scoring in a relationship, you're going to lose every single time. And it's never 50-50, but it's hard, like my wife just went for a walk. She's not going to hear this, but, and I don't think she's going to listen to this, but like, there's times where you do like 4 loads of laundry, you clean the kitchen and you're like, all right, it's my time to chill. That's keeping score. You can't do that, and as a coach, you can't keep score with the kid. Like if the kid's not putting the work in, I'm not going to play him, or he doesn't deserve to play. Like It should be a meritocracy. It should be based off merit. When it comes to working out, like, if you work out, lift weights, I think you see results over time. If you work out in sports, you see results over time, but you still can fail,
Totally.
When it comes to, and the hard part too is like for student athletes, like students who work really hard in school, most of the time you're going to do well. You know what I'm saying? There are so many external factors in sport, like timing and who's playing in front of you, who's playing with you, who you're playing against, what scheme you're running that you might not be part of it. Whereas in school, you work, good things are going to happen. As far as the kids go, the hardest thing for me, Chuck, is like, I know, at least I think I know what it's going to take for them to really enjoy, not to have success, like to enjoy sports. You got to have success. Like, it's really hard to enjoy sports losing and not being good. That is the truth. We all want to say like, oh, you're on a team, it's fun, blah, blah. But like, if you really want to enjoy it at the highest level, like, you got to work hard. So that is the hard part, is like, we moved into our house 4 years ago, and we put we built a house, and I put a court in our garage. I got two hoops in there. It's not like unbelievable, but that's like a blessing and a curse, because like I believe that they need to work for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, but they're in 6th grade, 4th grade, and 1st grade, right? But I'm probably training them like, I don't know, 3-4 days a week, and I love it. Put the music on, have a good time, but I check myself to not keep score. Like, I can't be like, oh, you didn't work out yesterday. And I find myself doing that, and it's going to take the fun out of it for them, and my wife is checking me about it too. When it comes professionally, as far as keeping score goes, I think the best leaders are relational leaders and servant leaders. And if you're keeping score with the constituents, the people that you're leading, you're going to lose, and they're going to feel it. Like, they're going to feel that you're checking up on them and keeping tabs and things like that. And you did this, so I'm going to do this, or whatever it might be. So I try not to keep score when it comes to relationships. When it comes to business, it's really hard. And it's something that I shared with you earlier that I don't share with a lot of people, is like, I do struggle with that piece of like, of constantly keeping score. Like, where's our revenue? Where's our bottom line? And where are we in April? Where are we in May in preparation for our summer? The bulk of our revenue comes from our summer camp. So it is really hard to step back and focus on the process and the value that you're adding in business, as opposed to constantly keeping score. And that better than anybody, leading sales teams, like, it's revenue generated, it's numbers generated. It's hard not to keep score, but that's where kind of having, that process orientation in your mind to just to fall back on that process, not worry about the results. And oftentimes those results do take care of themselves when you do that.
Absolutely. And to what you were just mentioning, from a standpoint of in business, but also just family, I look at this servant leadership type style of, I'm your flag carrier. Like, I am here to serve you, help you as much as I possibly can, and get you to where you need to be at. I think that has led to paramount success, and I don't want to change that anytime soon. And I recommend everybody to really approach leadership that way, whether it is with your personal life and professional life. It comes with a lot of fulfillment when you see people growing that way. One thing I do want to ask you as well is, how do you focus on getting 1% better every single day? And not just yourself, but how can athletes and parents also apply this principle in their lives of just that 1% every single day?
Yeah, it's great stuff, man. I think routines are really important. As I alluded to, like, my approach right now is really the mental, because I've been in a weird place, nowhere near your situation, but a year and a half ago, I had a torn labrum. So I had surgery in April, and they went in there and they were like, we can't do anything for this. It's bad, but we're going to drill into your hip, see if this works. It didn't work. So October, I just had a full hip replacement. So I thrive on working out. I thrive on sweating. I thrive on 7 days a week for 25 years. I worked out, and that's probably why I needed a hip replacement. But I haven't done anything in a year and a half in that space. So for me, it's like mentally staying focused and understanding that, like, at the end of the day, when I'm like stressed or anxious, it's probably because I'm not as active as I can be right now. Like, I have this hip issue, which leads to a neck issue. And so, how do I get 1% better each day? I'm trying to control my thoughts. I'm trying to get in my thoughts. I do a lot of prayer. I visualize as I pray, and I'm praying for peace. I'm praying for, health and things like that. From a ritual standpoint, I like getting up early in the morning. I do a ton of rehab. I sit in a sauna for 35 minutes every single day because that's my sweat. It's like the only way I can sweat right now. Like I can't even, jump on the Peloton or anything right now. It's still so sore. I just got off of a walker like 3 weeks ago. I was in a walker. So it's been a very humbling experience, which so I'm sure you're aware of. But as far as just trying to get 1% better each day really is, and having someone that you can lean on, like my wife is just a great person and she's a great resource. And like, she understands me and she understands like, I think growth happens with vulnerability. And when you're vulnerable about like your shortcomings and where you got to get better, where you got to get 1% better. When I share those things with you, like with her, the insight, she's just always on point and like understands like her big thing is an untethered soul. Like you shouldn't be, attached to earthly things and attached to ego and things like that. And so she's always checked. That's it, man. That
Great
like,
book.
that's on the table right here.
There you go.
So, like I'll come down. I mean, and she's like her rituals are great. She's in a candlelit reading that untethered soul and reading the Bible. That's what she does every morning.
Amazing.
And so that's been really helpful to me, but like, man, I'm so far away from where I want to be. Like, cause I know I can get there. I know I can get to a place where I'm not tethered by these negative thoughts and this false narrative and things like that. So my 1% better is really focusing on being more positive. And if you asked anyone, they would say, he's the most positive guy in the world. And I think I'm positive. I'm glass half full, all that stuff. But, I really want to try to control these thoughts and I want to play present. I want to be present for my family. I think from a business standpoint, as far as like 1% better, I would say something that I struggle with is overanalyzing things, like a little paralysis by analysis. And I want it to be perfect, but in reality, like, I just got to go and just do it. And when I start doing it, I feel better. I get like energy and I get excited about it. So
that momentum,
you know what I mean? And, so that's kind of how I'm focusing on getting 1% better at this time. I can't wait to get healthy because I know once my health gets back, I do think that's going to kickstart a lot of just feeling better and being a better father. And they know it, like they know like that, you're nuts right now, because it's been like a year and a half of not being able to get those endorphins and get, feel good about just lift. I love lifting and I haven't really been able to lift because of the hip and the neck. So
I was about to say students in every level of basketball have to start seeing you shoot those jumpers again and
exactly.
the camps and everything. And it's important. So I appreciate all the vulnerability and sharing your stories. They're incredible. And I took some great notes that I want to take for myself that really will help me. Shifting away from this, more into hoops real quick, I have to ask you one question. Who are your personal, not just points, personal top 3 shooters of all time and influenced your game? Because I have mine that really shaped how I played. I'm a 5'9" point guard, but I love shooting the ball like I was 6'4". So who are your top 3 shooters of all time and that you looked at and aspired to when you were forming your game?
Yeah. It's an awesome question. Top 3 is tough, but like when I look back, I current day, I love watching Steph Curry shoot the basketball. I love watching Devin Booker shoot the basketball. Those two guys, I really love their form. I love their mechanics. And I always love our guy, Justin Jaworski. Those are my guys that I love watching shoot the ball. And that's a guy you got to get on here. He is a 1% better. I
would love to have him on. I grew up with his siblings that are around my age. So
he would
love
jump
to
on
have
this in
him.
a heartbeat. Yeah. But when I was growing up, honestly, like I loved watching Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan was not a good 3-point shooter. I mean, he was an okay 3-point shooter, his mechanics were solid. But because watching so much Michael Jordan, like I watched a lot of Steve Kerr. I loved his mechanics. I loved his stroke. Chris Mullin, who played for the Warriors, he was left-handed, but I loved the simplicity of his form. For me, when it comes to shooting, like our bodies, and everyone shoots the ball differently, you know what I mean? And our bodies all react differently to the basketball, how we get the basketball to the rim. So when I'm working with a player, like I could say something to one player, some buzzwords or whatever it might be about his elbow or hands or release, and it might resonate differently with another player because our bodies all work differently, biomechanics work differently. And so I think that's the cool part about shooting. Like Steve Curry is a very, very effective shooter because his form was so simplistic and it was a natural body movement. Like if you think of running, this is a natural movement. Same thing as shooting. Like it should feel the same way. And so those are the kind of guys that like I like to watch. And like, you know, I loved shooting because shooting was like a controllable element. Like, you know, I talk about keeping score, but like there was a moment in time where like I started doing this shooting workout in 8th grade, and I didn't stop doing that shooting workout until 28. It was a 1 hour long shooting workout. You've probably seen videos. It's the spin shooting.
Yep.
And that's what I loved about shooting is I felt like it was a controllable element. Like I couldn't jump. I wasn't fast. I was slow, but man, if I could shoot and dribble, there was going to be a place to play. And you kind of see that in like a Steve Kerr. Like he wasn't fast, quick, anything like that. But my brother loved Charles Barkley. I loved Michael Jordan. So we always fought and battled, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Me, I mean, it's hard to go against Curry. It is so fluent, perfect. So I'd put him number one. I love JJ Redick.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, he was in college. So watching the Texas game when he dropped 41, 42, and on I think that was prime time at noon on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And he is just chirping to the sideline. That was just euphoric for me as like a high school kid. And I'm like, this guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I would say they're my two. And then my third, I'm very torn, but I got to go Shuttlesworth, Ray Allen.
I love it. I love
watching He Got Game, and then they have that slow motion of him pulling up, just practicing. That was something that I would just put on repeat because we didn't grow up in the YouTube time where there was millions of videos of just training and things like that. It was VHSs. If you really wanted to watch that type of stuff, there was actually, and this would be a 3B, Steve Nash. I loved Steve Nash's game coming down on a fast break.
Love it.
He would slow down defense and everybody would push forward and he would just pull up. And he had that pocket shot right here, which was so beautiful to watch as well. But he had a video that was on YouTube in like 06, 07.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it was just like 45 minutes of him doing a workout. And I remember I would rewind, pause, see where he was at and all these things. And my friends still text me to this day and they're like, can you imagine if you had the content that kids have today to like work on your game and everything? And I'm like, yeah, we found a way though. So those are definitely my guys that I always look to. And I'm sure there's more that after we hop off, I'll be like, oh, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have one more question for you. How can we support you in the work that you're doing, both as a teacher, coach, mentor, all the above?
Yeah, I mean, the message is so good. You've already supported me by teaching me about Riverside. I love this app here. No, I think I think your message is so good, and putting it out there, and putting it out there on social media, and kids are going to find it. Kids are going to listen to it. You know, when they hear that, they don't need to be first team all league as a freshman. They need to chip away at the process. We often, very similar to the mindset of your podcast of 1% better. Greg Popovich used to say, pound the block, right? And it was a stone cutter that's pounding the block. When the block finally breaks, it's not the last hit that did the block. It's all the hits leading up to it, right? You stack those days, you get 1% better, all of a sudden, that compound interest of skill acquisition, then you could be a player. So how can you support us? You keep putting out this great content, and it's going to help every level basketball kids. It's going to help Souderton kids, Perk Valley kids. The more this message gets out there that it's not going to happen overnight, and instant gratification, really only happens on social media and through that cell phone, I think it's the message is better because then they're going to be able to embrace that failure and just lock into the grind.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Dennis, thank you so much for doing this. Absolute pleasure. Appreciate your transparency, your wisdom, and just everything you've gone through to really support everybody that's listening to this, and we'll find it along the way. So thank you very much.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Likewise.
Let's keep in touch.
Yep, absolutely. Take care, everybody.